Hey everybody, today I have with me Red Firm, the developer of Commanding Nations, or the lead dev of Commanding Nations. I'm Tatsu, as you know, first founder of Inhard Media and Sanctuary, but that's enough about me. Red Firm, why don't you tell me about yourself?
Hey everyone. You probably know me by Red Firm. If you don't, that's my online name. But in real life, people know me by the name of Puglia. I'm one of the founders and currently running Sevenfolds Games. And we are working on Commanding Nations. And I'm here with one of our good, friendly studios, colleagues, Tatsu. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for coming on. So tell me, what is Commanding Nations?
Commanding Nations is basically a 20-year-old dream. We had Command and Conquer Generals, we had Command and Conquer Generals Zero Hour, and eventually, as a huge fan of those games, 20 years later, we found out that there really wouldn't be a sequel. We decided to make Commanding Nations. So it's ode or maybe a homage to games in the CNC universe, but at the same time, it's a base building RTS that really wants to innovate in key areas without reinventing the wheel.
All right. So could you tell me what's its full goal? What's its full scope?
Yeah. So just to give everyone an idea, we are heading to early access. So we have the core gameplay. So you have base building. You can attack units. You can basically do 1-versus-1 matches or versus skirmish. But the eventual goal of Commanding Nations is to create a RTS game that feels like a gaming as a service product, but doesn't have to be. We want to create one community where we constantly add different commanders, where we expand the game, make it grow, and where we don't split up the user base by having DLCs. So our goal is to constantly keep fitting into the game and creating this universe where there is lore, where there is a backstory, where you can play online ranked matches, have single player campaigns. But that's going to take a while. So our end goal is basically to have a game that brings in the old generation, so people like me. That's why I'm going to call your name too. So we are basically old, but also the new people who are currently right now playing games such as League of Legends, for example, and who actually never really had the experience of how fun an RTS game is.
The source of their fun in MOBA
Yeah,
titles today.
they don't know, but they will.
Yeah, that sounds that's a noble goal. I wholeheartedly support you.
Thank you.
So what if any are your hopes and dreams for Commanding Nations? I guess you kind of
Um,
went into that, but like let's see what, like, if you really stretch that to things go really well.
Yeah. So if it really goes well, our goal is to, like, right now we are self-funded, so we are basically working outside of our day jobs. But I really hope to get the team, Sevenfolds Games, everyone working on the game to a point where we can basically fund them, have them all on board full time, so we can all work full time on Commanding Nations. And the end goal is really have a game that's really alive and active. That's all we're really hoping for. I spoke to you a lot of times before, but one of our goals with Commanding Nations is to help bring back RTS to life. There are a lot of cool games coming up, like your game, like uh, a few others that got announced the past few days. So we really want to contribute to the RTS genre and just help revive it because it's such a fun genre to be in, to be playing it and having control over all these units, playing with your friends. I think when people experience this, they're just gonna fall in love. I think regardless of which RTS game that is. Um, but that's really our goal to have a game that people are really finding worth to spend money on to buy, so we can basically have a food on the table and be able to pay ourselves, and from there basically expand the game and just organically grow it, keep adding new content. A few of the titles that we look at is like as I named before, games such as League of Legends, not the gameplay, but basically how they add new champions. We would basically want to add new factions to the game that you can basically unlock by playing. Um, but we would also like to look at some other gaming as a service products out there. You have Fortnite, which is too much. That's just insane. We don't want to go towards having daily updates. But there's this other game, I forgot the name, but the Pirates, Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, that's a great example. So we hope to do kind of the same for the RTS genre, and just expand, grow, and eventually maybe in 4 or 5 years we can have 20, 30 factions, each with a unique gameplay, multiple maps, and giving gamers the freedom to kind of customize games. So if they want to play it on their own way, you can turn off certain elements, turn them on. But at the same time, if you want to go ranked and play against your friends and show off and have those badges, I don't know if people remember that, which you had in generals when you were online, have those in the game. So those were a lot of the elements that we took as inspiration.
All right. You mentioned like multiple factions, and now I'm curious. I want to get into it. But so like, have you thought about like how many factions you would have like maximum, or is it not necessarily a maximum? How many would release in the year or over the course of 2 years? How would that work?
Yeah. So we are hitting early access in September. That's going to launch with 2 factions. We have Hancorp, which is really heavy, slow units, but you just don't want to stand in their way. And we have Scav, which are the scavengers, and they're guerrilla warfare. They're going to hit and run. They have their tunnel systems. Immediately after early access launch, so 2-3 months after, we are adding Raven, which is going to be the air general, basically, or the air faction, which really works with intel gathering and making sure, basically, by having the right intel, that you don't reach their base. Because if you do, you're going to win, because they really focus on air superiority. After that, we want to have a total of 9 factions in the game for when we exit early access. That's the goal. Now, we have a lot of ideas. The world of Commanding Nations, if people have seen the lore, we initially, when we started 3 years ago, we had countries, you had, or continents even. You had Europe, you had Asia, you had Middle East. Then we basically decided, like, this is limiting our possibilities regarding what we want to do. So we moved away from that and went towards a world where PMCs exist, private military companies, where even the cartel, which is one of the factions that we're working on, the Mexican cartel, is going to be in the game. So we have a lot
that
of.
One will be popular.
Yeah. So this gives us a lot of freedom to do cool stuff. I'm not kidding you. We even discuss things like having a faction that has unicorns with rainbows. Like, we take ourselves serious in some aspects, but at the same time, we want to really be an inclusive game where everyone is welcome to play it. And this means that we also sometimes are going to add a faction that might be a bit crazy or over the top. We are not going to do the unicorn. That was just a concept, proof of concept. But those are stuff that we're working on. But also, like, factions that focus on using fire elements and just creating havoc with creating lines of fire where you can't pass through. So there are a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff we can do, and simply moving away from countries, from specific nations. I know Commanding Nations, but specific nations gave us freedom. Now, the cool thing is that we will also have countries in the game, but that's going to be managed, of course, again by a commander who is part of that army, or you name it. But to sum it up, we are going to have 3 factions really quick. We are launching with 2. Raven is getting added pretty quickly in 2-3 months, and eventually during early access, people who bought the game, they're going to get all these commanders for free. So that's not really going to be a problem. But we want to exit our early access with 9 commanders in total, including the 3. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any idea of like, because I asked about a maximum, do you think there would be a maximum, or would it be the kind of thing, kind of like League of Legends, where it can just go into infinity theoretically?
As long as it makes sense, So the idea that we have is we want to give every commander a specific direction that they really excel in. Um, if you look at all the games that are out there, like even League of Legends, for example, each champion has a specific power or superpower that they use. So we're trying to do that for the faction. So this means that we don't have a limit. We don't want to limit it. Really not, because if the game works, people are playing it, they're enjoying it, then we are basically going to add content. A decision which we actually took 2 days ago with the whole team was, once we go into early access, the whole team, none of us are going to take a percentage of the income. We're immediately going to invest it fully back into the game by hiring 3D artists, concept artists, and just expanding the game as much as we can with the money that we're making. So yeah, I don't know where we're going to stop, but I know that for early access, the goal is just to have the 9, and from there we're going to see how the community reacts. Because if you've been on our Discord, you know that we really, really try to listen to what our user base is saying. And we made a lot of changes based on their feedback, and we're going to keep doing that. A few of the rules that we have in the studio or in the team, game mechanics, all of those stuff, we're waiting for early access to hear player feedback, and from there just simply adjust and polish based on what players want.
I imagine like you've already started testing with the third faction, the aerial one, I guess.
Yeah.
That's not like I imagine like it doesn't necessarily have the models and the effects and all that stuff, but you have like a cube that represents it or something like that, right?
We actually had Raven fully finished.
Oh.
It was basically fully finished. We did gameplay tests, and we were like, the quality of the models and the quality that we want to have this just simply not represent what it needs to be. So yeah, we dumped, I think, maybe 6 months of work. Yeah.
So it's fundamentally an art decision. It's like the art isn't up to par. But the balance is there, basically.
Exactly. The code is fully there, and that's why we are pretty sure that we're going to have Raven in the game in a few months. Like in 2 or 3 months, it's going to be fully in the game, because we simply just have to update the models, redo them, have them in the style that fits Raven's story. Because initially, Raven was called something else. They were AUM faction in Europe, so all the models were based on European tanks and units, and it just didn't make sense. So yeah, it set us back like by 6 months, but eventually it's just gonna add so much more, and it's gonna be the first faction where we based our modeling, so our whole modeling pipeline, onto a new process that we kind of worked on to be able to create new factions within like 3-4 months time frame. So it's for multiple reasons. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And to extend on that, I want to kind of know or ask about the, balancing pipeline that you perhaps are working on or already have in place for all these new factions. How does that work? Do you guys already have you guys already started on the ideas and the concepts for these other factions, or right now are they just in the phase of ideas? And if they've started, do you have like testers who are working with that? How does that work?
Yeah, so we do have the lore and the backstory for these factions. We have Phil, who kind of is writing all these amazing stuff, and but we are going to keep it there. So we have like maybe 20 pages of ideas for factions. They're kind of worked out, but regarding the coding and implementation, we're going to do one faction at a time. So we basically work like this. We come up with the idea of a faction. From there, we kind of come up with these crazy gameplay elements. And just to give you an example, the Scavengers faction, which is going to be included, we have a Razor unit. It's called Razor Tank, and it shoots a harpoon, and it connects to opponent units. So we're still balancing what we want to do with that, because we have a few neat ideas. One of them is, once it connects, it kind of pulls itself in, and you hear a ticking sound, and once that reaches 0, it's going to explode. So you want to get that single unit away from all your units as soon as possible. Another crazy element we had that was that it shoots at airplanes. It misses a few times, but if it connects, it's just basically gonna get dragged by the airplane back to your base or wherever that jet is gonna go. So you have to decide, am I gonna bring that jet back to my base and have that unit drop in the middle of my base like a bomb? Or am I just gonna keep my air unit floating in the middle of nowhere where it can be taken down by anti-air? So
I
you have
see.
a
I see
lot
what
of
you mean. There's a lot of things you can do with that. Like you could even have it be something where, like, once it harpoons a unit, it has to bring it close all the way to the point where it gets, in contact with it, and then after a little while, the unit switches sides, right?
yeah, exactly.
So there's a whole lot of things that you could do there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I see what you mean. You guys come up with like a lot of ideas for different
yeah.
abilities.
And that's why we always say, like, we had a lot of comments on the visuals back in the last few years, and we always say gameplay first, because even if you look at like Counter-Strike, like games that have really solid gameplay, if the gameplay is good, people are going to stick around. Visuals are going to impress them for just maybe one day or two. So we really want to get the gameplay right, and from there, but we are going to invest money and update the visuals as we go. But yeah, the idea in general is just one faction at a time. We do have a list, like a whole list of units, factions, how their buildings should work, how they should behave. We also have our whole item shop that we want to add to the game. Those are a few of the changes that we made compared to Command and Conquer series, because initially, for those people who played it, you have general powers in those games, and you can basically, the more you attack opponents, you unlock powers which you can use. For example, artillery cannon from the Chinese faction, or MOAB by the U.S. Air Force. But in our game, we basically want to say, okay, cash is king. So the game's economy is run on one element, and that's money. You have to collect it. Items are bought with that. If you buy an item, you can maybe buy a unit upgrade so they get more armor, or that they have maybe a bit more damage towards certain units, or maybe that they heal faster. These are taken from MOAB games, or games such as League or Dota, where
Yeah,
items,
mobile.
yeah. Um, so even if you build super weapons, which we're going to have in the game, because it's such a overpowering element, we decided, okay, you want to use it, that's fine, but you won't just have a countdown that it's going to count to 0 and then it's available. Once you use it, you're basically going to have to pay for that usage. And if you don't have the money, you're not going to be able to use it. So you have to really think strategically. Do I want to use all of my money in game to just build units, spam units out? Or do I want to use that towards upgrades and items? Or do I maybe want to use $2,000 to use my super weapon once and wreak havoc on certain parts of the map? So by making people take these critical decisions, the game can really take a different turn. And we feel like that was something that we missed a lot in other games, where basically you had the game economy, but it only counted for the units that you produce or your buildings, But what about all the other elements in the game? By doing this, we are kind of hoping that the player will explore the map, go out there, see what's out there, try to gather new resources and expand upon that. So there's a lot going in the game, which just made us have to work on it so long, which you can't see. It's in the back end, but it's really there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I kind of feel like we started to delve into this question already, but
Yeah.
how far would you say you're along on this project?
Excuse me, how long?
Oh, how far along are you on Commanding Nations?
So we are at the point where the core gameplay works. So once we hit early access, the core gameplay works. And with that, I define the core gameplay as you and I playing in multiplayer or, against skirmish. And I can basically have my units, have my buildings without anything on top, just pure gameplay. Imagine you would have no upgrades with items or super weapons, just a pure gameplay. That should be fun, that should work, and you should have the destructions. You should have electricity that goes out if you don't have enough power plants. So all of that is in there, and we want to have the early access few months to gather feedback and adjust certain elements. So how much damage does each unit do? What should our damage or unit range be? But the core gameplay is really there. We are really 100% confident on that. And I think everyone will realize once early access launches, from there we are going to update the map, Goldhorn Island, which is basically 2 versus 2. We are adding 3 additional maps pretty quickly afterwards. We are updating all the VFX effects. If you have building destructions, we are adding the air system. So I think the game is really in a good spot. You might not see it visually, but if you play the game, like I remember Marius, who is one of our programmers, together with Charlie, he's the co-founder and also programmer. They recently just pushed the latest build, and I started the game and I was playing, and I kid you not, I got pretty emotional because it all clicked. It all clicked. It was fun, and I was like, yes, this is it. So yeah, we are pretty much there. Of course, there are a ton of bugs. I'm like, we are not worried about that part, but we are really close. Yeah.
Sometimes in the process, it's like it can be quite a strong moment when you finally get to some sort of vertical slice, right? Because it takes so long to build like the different blocks, all the blocks that are going to need to come together to make the whole, especially in an RTS where there are so many of those blocks. But when it does finally come together into something, you're like, wow, for a year or so, I was going like, where are we gonna get there one day or something, and then there it is. But yeah, it does take a while, and even then, each and every block needs its updates and stuff like that. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but especially as you just said in RTS gaming, there are moments where you feel like it's just not working. You feel like you're stuck. And something that I absolutely adore about our team is how each and everyone just backs you up. When you feel demotivated and you're like, no, this isn't working. Like I call Charlie like my motivation speaker in the team, because when I feel down, the dude is always like, let's do this. We got this. We're going to push through. And he just comes up with these updates and he motivates me. And at the same time,
picks you up when you're down.
Exactly. And the whole team is like that. And it's just such a reassuring feeling knowing you have people that are just there and doing their best for the project, and you don't have to be telling them what to do, because that really doesn't work. Like the core teams that we are building, the idea that I had when assembling the team, like in the past 3 years, I always said every individual that joins should be a leader. Because if we grow, they have to manage their own people, manage their own 3D artists, programmers, and you name it. And I'm just really happy about that. That I feel like everyone in the team is at a point where they know more in the respective fields of what they're doing than I do, and that's just really such a fine feeling. Just to know that you don't have to have all the answers anymore. You're all doing it together. You're all in it. And when you get a build like this, I even called my mom. I was like, Mom, remember that game? Yeah, no, you remember that game that I played like when I was a kid? And she's like, yeah, we're doing that. Yeah, that's really the end game.
But this is a great lead-in, because I was about to ask, how big is the team?
Ooh, how big is the team? So we are now like, you have Charlie, you have Marius, you have Phil, you have Joao, and you have me. We're basically the ones who are in the technical elements, so programmers, 3D artists, technical artists. We have Phil, who's writing the story. We have Jordan, who recently joined the team and who took off the whole social media management off my hands. Thank you. He just joined. We have Timon and Nathan, who are basically just helping out moderators, but they're really good kids, and I know them for a long time. We also have a Scope who's doing our OST for the game. I'm just trying to think if I didn't forget anyone because I will feel really bad. Yeah, we have Jay who's doing the videos, like commentary videos. He works on that a lot, and that's basically it. We had a lot of people come and go.
Mm.
For example, we have Jimmy who tries to help with concept art. He's in Australia. Time zone is really hard. But we were initially a really big team. At some point, we were with 18 people. Yeah, you know. But honestly, as I said earlier, a lot of people came and went, and I feel like
You're talking about people that were on the team as volunteers, also.
yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, that was kind of hurtful because a few people left the team who I really trusted, and they left the team like a week before we were planning on finishing up for Kickstarter, which delayed the game by a year. It just was a really bad experience. But end of the day, this is the team that we have, and I'm really happy, honestly, with how things worked out.
All right. Yeah. So that's about like 4 or 5 core members, plus a lot of a big cast of rotating volunteers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I guess like within that team of core members, you have like 2 or so really dev people that are like focusing on code only issues, right?
Yeah. So we have Charlie and Marius who just do pure code. Even though Charlie knows a lot about everything, I do really have to kind of tone him down and say, okay, just focus on the code because he's more excited than anyone else. And he just like, I made this 3D model. No, Charlie, please, we need you in the coding department. So Charlie can do a lot more, but he's really focusing on coding. Marius is really experienced in coding. Joao, he's a really extremely talented technical artist, but I call him a technical artist, 3D artist, special effects, VFX. Like the dude can do it all. It's just crazy. Phil, he writes amazing stories, so that's beautiful to have. I'm towards a technical artist 3D, but also more art direction. I feel like I'm almost in the same place as you are, except I don't code. So I'm trying to help wherever I can.
You say except I don't code, but like that applies for me as well.
Okay,
like, I don't code anymore. I don't have time. I'm just no.
No, I can't code. I don't know how to. So yeah, that's
okay.
That's kind of my role, and yeah, just being everywhere and being like, hey, is this really what we want, guys? You know, and then disappearing into the darkness. But that's kind of how this team is set up. Yeah.
All right. This is actually a good lead-in for another one of my questions. I wanted to ask, what are you guys' backgrounds like? Because it's not, only necessarily game dev school and then straight into video games, right? So tell me a little bit about where you guys come from.
I'll start with the team. So Charlie initially comes from the web dev background. He has more than 15 years experience in that part. So he if you want anything done on a website element, that guy can just do it. Same goes with Marius. He's actually he was or is or well he's in a position where he's actually the CTO of a huge software company. And he wants to get into the gaming business, so he's a really experienced coder as well. So those two really come from the web dev, but they can code, so I'm not going to complain. Then we have Joao, who has always been in the gaming industry. He lives in Brazil, by the way. Marius lives in the Netherlands, like I do, and Charlie's in the UK. And Joao currently, he worked on Roblox. He worked on a few huge titles. He's currently also working on a few huge titles. Phil has always been writing, so that's what he does. But he also helps around with, fine-tuning the game design documentation. if there are letters on a paper from us, he probably did it. So, and my history has been in the gaming industry. I studied game design, and I worked for companies such as GamePoint. Um, like most of my history has been on the business and marketing side, but I started as a designer and then 3D, and I kind of grew through the years into knowing technical art. While I'm not a technical artist, VFX and kind of managing all that stuff. So we have a lot of experience in that department when it comes to game creation, game design. When it comes to the other guys, Timon and Nathan, they're basically helping around. They're still students, but Timon, he's studying towards the management part of game design at the university. And Timon, he's studying robotics, if I'm correct, or AI at another university. So they're really smart kids. Well, kids are in their 20 something, but I feel so old. And Jimmy, he's a concept artist. And I don't know if I missed anyone else, but we got Scope. He makes music. That's
Hmm.
his bread and butter. Yeah.
Right. And I heard you mention that like you guys were in different parts of the world. Is that any sort of a difficulty for you guys? You guys are like a fully remote team, or how does that work?
Yeah, we are fully remote and it really works. And I'm not sure if it's going to work forever because if you worked in a studio, like I worked in different studios where with maybe 200, 300 people, and at that point it becomes really difficult. But I do feel like remote work works if you're a small team. At the same time, I would love to see these people just sit in a room and just brainstorm about ideas, come up with new solutions. But it works for us, honestly. It does. It's so hard sometimes with the time zones, but end of the day, we really didn't hit any difficulties. Um,
How did you make it happen? What tools, techniques do you use?
Um, how did we make it happen? I think I burned out my whole network to get the team together. But we primarily said, okay, we're just gonna use one platform, just Discord, and we're gonna keep things really simple and stupid. Like we're not gonna pretend like we're this big ass studio. We're just gonna work as simple as we can. So we simply use Trello and we use Discord. And in Discord, we kind of have a channel where we share really important stuff. We have a channel where we share programming updates, design updates. We also have locked channels, for example, where we can ask each other questions. So we kind of split up our whole communication process. So if you want to ask a question, you do it in a certain channel. If you want to have fun chats, you do it in a certain channel. Programming is really locked for programmers. We kind of noticed that that became really a mess because programmers don't really enjoy people constantly hopping in and asking questions between what they're doing. So they have their own log channel. Everyone can see it, but nobody can kind of talk in that channel. So by splitting every different type of communication in their own lanes, we managed to keep it organized. And still to this day, we still have to find solutions to some stuff. But we don't have the budget to buy everyone maybe a Asana package or whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, so we try to really focused on what matters, and our working principle is we work in iterations. And with that, I mean, I always like to tell people that we work like we are on a 56K connection. If you ever used to load an image, you would first get the whole block and it would be really blurry. And every time it would become sharper and sharper. That's basically how our whole production pipeline works. So we create the map. If that works, we continue, we add the second layer, third layer, details, and from there, maybe the tiny stuff such as grass and maybe a small rock in on the road.
Right. Yeah, the vertical slice approach, trying to be as yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In a way, yeah.
All right. So yeah, um, what motivated you to do this, and how did you arrive into this project?
Um, what motivated me? I think the moment Generals 2 got canceled, that was really, if people remember that game launched, it was free to play um, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I applied for the beta testing, like one of the first people who ever applied. And one of my close friends suddenly, like a month later, texts me like, "Hey, I'm in the beta." I'm like, "No way." And I never got invited. And that still hurts to this day. And the problem is, he applied like a day before the beta went live. So that's the whole thing. And I was just sitting there, everyone was playing it, and I was just burning around, like, where can I find gameplay footage? And before the game left their beta release, they canceled it. And I kind of waited a long time for Generals 2. I think a lot of people did. So it really came from a position like, I want this game to happen. I don't know why the game was not good enough for EA, why they canceled it. I never had the chance to play the beta release or the open beta release, but it has to happen. So if you look at the game design documents that I wrote, it really dates back to maybe 7 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago. I don't know when that time was. So I wrote that documentation, and then I realized, shoot, I don't have the right team for this. I basically had my first studio at a time, and uh, that means we had an office, we had costs, So we had to do these projects for people to be able to afford and keep the studio open. And when the recession hit at a time, I don't know if it was in 2008, or we simply had to close shop. And from there, I kind of got into the gaming industry by having a job instead of being self-employed. And all these years, I had the game design documentation laying around. And 3 years ago, I saw on Discord that people were working on an RTS game. And I actually messaged Joao, like, "Hey, do you know anyone who's working on a game or wants to, work on this idea?" Just like, you should talk to Charlie. And I messaged Charlie like, "Hey, want to team up?" That was literally the opening line. "Hey, want to team up?" He's like, "Yeah." um, so we basically started from
Magic.
there. Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, we did it like for a few months together, and then I reached out to Charlie and said like, "Bro, I love you with all my heart. I really do, but we can't do this together. It's just such a huge project. We either have to get a team together or we have to call it quits." And the great thing about Charlie and I is that we kind of always see eye to eye. We always understand each other. And it was like, "Go ahead. I trust you. Do your magic." And from there, I slowly started on working on a team. It actually took me about a year to get Joao on board. I constantly kept spamming him because he was working on his own game. Um, and here we are 3 years later. And when I tell you I burned out all my network to get the team together, I kid you not. I messaged everyone I knew, like, "Hey, want to help us? You interested?" And I got turned down a lot, but that's I'm really happy that that happened, because one of my closest friends, who is a senior or even a lead artist at a huge studio, I won't name it because of private reasons. He was like, "Puri, I really want to help you, but I simply don't have the time. And I know how you are, how you work, and the commitment that you demand from people. I know you like for almost all my life. So I would love to be a part of the project. But if I join you, I'm not going to be able to invest the time that everyone else is doing." That was kind of the fair and honest reaction that I gladfully got from people. And that resulted in finally being able to put together a team with people who could make that sacrifice. Because, like, right now, you look a lot better, but I've spoken to you during crunch times, where you were working, you were basically sleepless.
Yeah.
I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. The late nights, just pulling through, and sometimes I have to tell my girlfriend, who is going to be my wife pretty soon. We're getting married this Saturday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Like, I'm also really happy to have someone as supportive as her, who knows that there's a reason why I stay awake till 3 in the morning, and just what the end goal or dream is. But yeah.
All right. I wanted to ask, like, okay, so being an indie dev, it's hard and everything, but what do you do to those people for who it's never enough and their expectations is so high? How do you handle
Uh,
that?
it's hard. It really is hard. We had it a lot. Like last year was such a humbling moment for us. You know, we came crashing out the gates. Everyone was like, "Oh, commanding nations, yeah, it's gonna be the new generals," and we simply just hit so many roadblocks where we had to keep our head down and cut communication. You know, we even had friends in Ukraine who were affected by what was going on. Uh, Thankfully, it's okay. I checked in with him a lot. We kind of decided like, okay, our whole like we had a country which was being invaded. We had all these problems going on internally, but we just kept shut. And we try to just ignore it. But I'm going to be honest, it really is hurtful. People don't understand that we are putting in so many hours to get a game out there, and early access never means you're going to get a finished product. Um, the reason why we are going to early access is because we're almost out of cash. Like that's the honest truth, and we
Hmm.
need to have some money to be able to add more elements to the game. Like when a person buys the game, 30% goes to Steam. That's fine. Like the 11 US dollars that goes in our pocket basically directly goes into making the game better. So when people are expecting us to deliver this perfect game, they have to understand we did it without a publisher. You know, a few stuff which I can't openly talk about, but it's not like we didn't have the chance to sign with publishers. We just didn't do it because we didn't want to lose the creative freedom that we have. So people need to understand that when you say this game looks bad, or it's a failure, or it's not polished, early access was never meant to give you a finished product. It was meant to be able to have some money to be able to work on the game while you can give us feedback and tell us how to improve it. So I'm really open in people being critical about the game. Please be critical, but give us feedback that we can work with. But simply typing like this is the worst game I've ever seen, or this I'm not going to support this, or it's excuse me for my language, but this is shoot. Um, that really doesn't help anyone. But if you want to
Hmm.
contribute, even like on any RTS game or any game that you're supporting, if you can donate because. Like you can ask Tatsu this. We don't use the money for ourselves. It's basically going directly in the game. If you want to give feedback, give us constructive feedback that we can use. Like for example, the terrain looks bad. Can you update it? Or it could look like this. Or these are games that are doing it nicely. And trust me, we always listen.
All right. Good answer.
Yeah.
Uh, I wonder what you would say to somebody who's an aspiring game dev. What would you advise to that person?
Don't make RTS games.
That's a good answer. I like that. No, because RTS games are hard. Like, I mean, I probably say that like the hardest genre to make out of all the genres is MMORPG. I don't know if you necessarily expect that as an answer, but because of like the the crazy level that your netcode has to be at
Yeah.
and the crazy amount of content, it's just like the maximum on all levers, right? So
Yeah.
it's so much to do. But RTS is kind of like right after that if you want to have an RTS that's kind of a complete bundle. And people in the RTS universe kind of expect that complete bundle.
Yeah.
You got to have the comp stomp, the playing versus AI. You got to have a good campaign. You got to have good multiplayer. But all those things are different skill sets and different blocks that you have to put into the final artwork, and they have to fit well together, which makes the whole balancing act much more challenging. So yeah, RTS definitely super hard to make.
It is. It is. And I think regarding game dev, so just in general, if you want to become a game dev, um, I always kind of was everywhere, you know. I tried to do 3D code, etc. But really keep it small, like what Tatsu said. Just keep it small. Try to focus on gameplay elements. You know, that's the most crucial part. Don't get hyped by wanting to create the next World of Warcraft or the next Call of Duty. That you have to imagine, like 500-600 people work on those games, and they still don't reach their deadlines. um, Try to really do something small and realize what a game is. At the end of the day, a game is something that should be fun, that should draw people in. Try to think of gameplay loops. So what happens if you start, and how can you make people want to play it again? If you're a programmer, it's okay to not know anything. Just know how to search Google. If you're a creative artist, just try to ask for as much feedback as you can. And please, a rule that I tell everyone, something that we always say in the team: kill your darlings. This means don't be afraid to dump something in pursuit of something better. A lot of the times, especially in the art departments where I come from, a lot of younger generation people are married to their work. So if you criticize them, they take it personally. So try to split that. If people have criticism on your work, dump it. It's okay. Try something else. See if you can do better. If you're in that stage, if you're in that concept stage. So it's really crucial to understand that your idea, what you have, that's not $1 million idea. Talk about your game to people. A lot of the time, especially new devs, they want you to sign NDAs. They want you to do this. Trust me, as a dev, I'm not going to steal your idea. I already have enough on my plate, and making your game is probably going to cost me 2 years. So talk to other devs, reach out, share your ideas, and get that feedback. If you know someone who knows more than you, reach out to them. The most important thing is really building up your network and having people who know more than you. That's all I can say, really. That's what helps me, and always has helped me to just reach out to people and learn from there. And understanding that, okay, I made this, 9 out of 10 people don't like it. It's probably bad. That's just how it is.
Yeah, you got to face the truth, or face the music, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good advice. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, Commanding Nations. Where can people find it? What links, if any, are relevant?
So we just launched our new website, commandingnations.com. You can probably find all the information you need, even the Steam link, lore of the game. You can always join us on our Discord, which you can also find on the website, but just heading over to commandingnations.com is enough. You can also find us on Steam by, searching for Commanding Nations. Don't forget to hit that wish list button, please.
I'll put the links to the to the Steam page, to the Discord, and to the website in the description of this video. So
thank you very much.
Check those
Appreciate
out.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, yeah, this has been great. This has been a very interesting interview, and we got through a lot of interesting questions, and some quite good time as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's hoping we have you again on this channel. And yeah, see you around.
Thank you, Tuts, for having me, and everyone have a good day. Cheers.